It is absolutely wonderful to be here, and I'd like to thank you all for asking me. I would also like to thank the lady who pointed out the error of my ways last night when I went to the restroom at the meeting and discovered that the door showing a cutout of a man wearing a kilt is not one that's I think she spoiled a good thing, you know, but it's the other thing, and I seem to get in trouble. I run a croft in Glencoe. You know what a croft is? It's a piece of land entirely surrounded by regulations. Coming over, I got one of my neighbours, a charming lady in her late 60s, who will never be the face for the cosmetics on the cover of Vogue, but she's looking after my animals, and I thought the duty-free girl came down the plane with all the duty-free stuff, and I thought, oh, okay, she'll have something nice. So I said, have you perfume? I thought, send, you know. The girl very sneakily said, oh yes sir, $120. I thought, what? Less. So she produced another bottle, $85. And I thought, this is for a, you know, she'd rather have a new tractor than a tractor. So then I said, I'm sorry, can you not show me something, you know, quite a bit cheaper? And she said, yes sir, and got a mirror out from underneath and said, here you are. Sorry, let's go on to the talk before I have grandchildren living in the south of England, which is very crowded and jammed. They come up to see me, and young Fraser on his way up, if anybody's been to Glencoe, you'll know you drive for miles and miles to come to a wee village of 65 people, then you drive for another hour without MD and you come to Glencoe, which is about 260 people. And he says, Daddy, where is everybody? Grandpa, where have they all gone? So I'll be able to tell them to go back, they're all in Pittsburgh. Because, or in America. And it's quite amazing the ties there are between Scotland and America. In Scotland, we were very gratified during the war, when the GIs were in Britain, that when they got a furlough, 90% of them took their furlough in Scotland. And we were delighted because they were spending money, not because they were. And the other thing that we find gratifying is that of the 73 people in the US Hall of Fame, 25 of them have Scottish blood, which is quite remarkable for a wee country. The other 50 odd have Scotch whisky in the veins. And we played a big part in the foundation of America. In fact, the University of Pennsylvania was founded in 1740 by William Smith from Scotland. But you probably know that, I don't need to tell you these things. We have a very strong affiliation between us all. And really, that's because of the clearances. You've heard of the clearances, when we ask people to leave. And somebody in a television programme, I think it was in Canada, said, why did your forebears leave Scotland? And he said, well, their houses were on fire. It was a natural inducement, you know. Now, the only story I know about the clearances, I live in a croft, as I told you, it's a piece of land, and this croft runs up from the house in Crofting Township that I live in. Each of us has a long strip of land, and we keep several cattle in this bit of land. They're in the croft all winter, and then in the summertime, come May, we turn them loose, and the cows wander over the glen doing the grazing and the common grazing. And we grow hay on the croft, and cut that and keep it for the winter when the cows come back. Cows are like teenagers. When they're hungry, they come home. And they bring the washing too. And the cows, in the winter time, when they come back, we feed them the hay, and we go to the whisky distilleries, and we get the whisky mash, you know, that they make the whisky with, and we feed that to the cows. This explains why England had mad cow disease and foot and mouth disease, and we had cows that were singing Gaelic songs. And I'm leaning against the fence. Any more of that mash, Jimmy? I'm coming. So, 2 nights ago, right? My croft runs up from the house. The croft next to me, some years ago, was an old lady of 86, old Charlotte. And one February morning, the rain had come in off the Atlantic in a force 12 gale, picked up all the water, come over the icy mountains to get nice and cold, and then came at us at a 45-degree angle in the wind. And old Janet's cows had got out through a hole in the fence into my croft. And I'm standing at the fire at 10 o'clock having a coffee, thinking, oh, that's a shame, that poor old woman at 86, and nobody's helping her. Oh, it's sad. And then I realised nobody else was. So, never mind a kilt, I wore gumboots, an oilskin, a hat, whistled my 2 collies who were sleeping in front of the fire, struggled to open the back door, and the 2 collies came to the back door, looked at the rain, looked at me, looked at each other and said, sod that, and went and lay in front of the fire. And Janet and I were out trying to get these cows back through a hole in the fence. And the cows were having the time of their life, you know, they hadn't had so much fun since the bull had been round. So every time we got the cows to the hole in the fence, the wee black heifer got round, the rain got worse, the mud churned up, my gumboot got stuck in the mud and came out, and fortunately my stocking feet went onto something which was reasonably warm. And we eventually got the cows back through the hole in the fence. And as I tied the fence up for her, old Charlotte is cursing uphill and down dale. She's calling the English something that would terribly have vexed the old Queen if she'd heard it. And when I get my breath back, I said, oh, Janet, come on. We like to blame the English for everything, but there's no one to blame but yourself for a hole in the fence. Oh, she said, it's not that, Arthur, she said. It's just that they had been a bit more efficient during the clearances. She said, I could have been an orange farmer in Florida right now. Instead of being stuck in bloody Glencoe. Sorry, I'll have it. Please, if any of you ever go to Glencoe, I beg you, do not tell Emily you saw me drinking water. My street cred is finished. I retired, much to the relief of my company in 1988, who gave me a big presentation and a sigh of relief and paid me off. And as soon as I was retired, I got asked into all the unpaid jobs in the village. And one of them was a museum. So I've been running the museum since then. It's not bad, actually. Hidden among all these old things, you know, I don't look too bad, you know. And in there, one of the things we do, you mentioned checking your ancestors tonight, we do quite a bit of that. And people come into the museum and they say, have you any records? We have. We've got baptisms, births, yes, marriages, go right back for a few hundred years. I actually found a minister going back to 1163, which is quite good. And when Rick was round doing his filming, he said, how much do you charge, Arthur, you know, for finding people's ancestors? Nothing at all, Rick, I said. We do it just, you know, to save being bored. So it doesn't cost you anything. But what does cost you a hell of a lot is getting me to keep quiet. Because I'm asked to leave for a good reason, you know. But I had a lady in, if I say from North America, you'll understand it means a continent and maybe not Pittsburgh. She came in last September and came up to the desk and said that her grandfather had come from Glencoe. And, you know, we get this about once a day. And I went, oh, yes, did he, you know. Oh yes, she said, he was in the 8th of Giles. And immediately I thought, well, that's our local regiment. Fine, I said, we'll probably have a photograph of him. And I started to get the books out and I said, tell me anything else about him, you know. Oh, she said, I can't because he was killed in the war. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Which war was he killed in, the first or the second? Oh, gee, she said, I don't know because I know he fought in both of them. There wasn't really a hell of a lot I could add to that. I would like to dispel some rumours, and Gerald mentioned it. Glencoe is a lovely glen. It belonged originally to McDougall's, and then McDonald's, and then the Smiths, and now the National Trust. But the next glen to us is Glen Lyon, and Glen Lyon belongs to the Campbells. And because the two glens are neighbours, they're allies. And they have been for 2,000 years. Any battles that last since the Middle Ages, the two clansmen, the two glens have stood shoulder to shoulder. Always shoulder to shoulder against a common enemy. But you know what neighbours and allies are like. If they come round, you hide the silver and you lock up your daughters. In the case of Glen Lyon, you also lock up your grandmothers, but that's okay. As you know, the Romans invaded Britain in 55 BC and conquered England one weekend and then came up to Scotland. They fought as far as Glen Lyon, and between Glen Lyon and Glencoe is the Rannoch Moor, which is a massive great peat rock. And the Romans marched across that to sort out the rest of us. I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Romans in heavy armour and tin hats and big shields and steel shin guards do not go down well in the peat. Yeah, they go down very well. It was a case of, oh, another one. Us 0, Roman 360. Glen Lyon was the northernmost limits of the Roman Empire. And it was in Portingal, in Glen Lyon, that Pontius Pilate was born, who went on to become Procurator of Judea. I can see what you're saying, sir, another bloody lawyer, but you know he was. And I have a lovely memory of being about 8 years old, which must have been 70 years ago, in the church in Ballaghoolish, Easter Sunday. I'm sitting there in my tweed jacket, bells kilt. Next to me is my grandmother, 5'6" of black clad, grey-haired, ramrod straight, Ballaghoolish grandmother, sitting there like the wrath of God. The minister is talking about the crucifixion and explaining how Pontius Pilate had washed his hands, you see, and sent Jesus to be crucified. And my old grandmother nudging me and saying in a very loud whisper, aye, she said, just the kind of behaviour you would expect from a Glen Lyon man. But in fact, I want to scorch this rumour. There was a massacre in Glencoe in 1692. Can I just say it was nothing really to do with Campbells, and there wasn't many McDonald's killed. They were mostly Rankins and Hendersons and Kennedys. But my own family, my 6 times removed great-grandmother, was a wee girl of 9 the night of the massacre, and she hid in the peat stack behind the house, and the redcoats came round and they pushed their bayonets into the peat, and she got a bayonet in her left hand and cried out, and the redcoat who did it saw her, went like that and put the peats back, and he shouted to the officers it was a dog, and she escaped with her family over the Larry Hill to the next glen, to the Campbells, and the Campbells sheltered them, helped them, and gave them cattle and things to start back up again. And Corson Rowe lived to be 92 with a withered left hand. Now that's the story. I know the Highlands, it may or may not be right, but what was true, that at the massacre of Glencoe, the Campbells were of great help to us. And in fact, of the 720 redcoats who carried out the massacre, only 11 of them were Campbells. Probably enough-minded. And 14 were McDonald's, but we'll draw a veil over that. Actually, to go back onto the subject, out in the middle of the loch, in Loch Lomond, is a burial island. You know how in Scotland we bury people in islands? Dead people. Mind you, that's a thought, isn't it? I've got this parliament. No, it's fine. All I'll say with the Scottish Parliament is that my old grandfather said he had a soft spot for politicians. It's a peat bog between the two. We bury people in islands because we have the old Celtic belief that spirits cannot cross over water. If you ever read Tam O'Shanter, you know how to make the keystone of the brig. And this is why we bury people in Ireland, so the spirits can't get to us. And I know, definitely, that spirits can't cross over water, because last year, Alexander McConaughey and Alec Mackenzie and I sailed my boat the 25 nautical miles to Oban to take part in the regatta. And when we left Glencoe Bay with a full bottle of whiskey, and we got to Oban, it was empty. So just in case it wasn't right, we're going to try it this year. Just
Take 2 bottles.
I wish I had your that. It's a wonderful thing, education. I wish I'd thought. Actually, you know the song, "You'll take the high road and I'll take the low road." That was written in 1749. 2 Highland officers were incarcerated in Carlisle jail after Culloden. One of them, Mornington, had been badly wounded and was dying, and his friend had given his parole and was being released the next day. And Mornington was saying, "You'll take the high road home, you'll walk, and I'll take the low road." Which means if you die abroad, your spirit travels home underground, because it can't cross over water. And this is a great belief of ours, that soldiers my friends who were killed during the war, they're buried where they fell, but their spirit comes home under the ground. And that's called taking the low road. My eldest brother Archie was badly wounded in France in 1940. Unfortunately, married the girl who nursed him back to health in London. The poor man hadn't a chance, you know. Came up to Ballabullish for their honeymoon in 1941. Vera took one look at our one miserable shop and no picture houses and said, "That's it." And they lived all their life in Croydon. Archie and I remained great friends. He used to come up to see me, and we would drink whiskey and have a great time. I would go down and see him with a cup of tea and a biscuit. Archie had 2 requests. He knew he wouldn't live all that long. And 2 requests. One was he wanted pipe home. And the day that he died, Vera phoned, and my eldest son's a piper, and at sunset we went down to the loch side to the headland, and he played a lament, and that was him piping his uncle home. And the other request was for that stuff. Archie and I had kept that distillery going over many years, and he wanted a glass of that poured over his grave, which I did encourage. Obviously, I flushed it. I'd be the same, he'd be saying cheer to his mother when I cheers Archie. We digress. We digress. I'm wandering off as I often do. We've had quite a lot of people leaving Scotland, and while I'm sure you have strong memories and images of Scotland, we're very proud of the sons who went abroad and carried the name of Scotland right through the world, and you've done us proud, all of you. Everywhere you go, you find Scots in charge of everything. You just need to go in anywhere. I was wounded in Korea, was being nursed back to health in Japan, and the physiotherapist, a Japanese girl, was giving us exercises, to do. Is there any country dancers here? This is true. That be lassie. We said, "We're going to do exercises." She said, "No, we'll do the Duke of Perth." That was 1951 in Japan. Of course, we went other places. My old grandfather, paternal grandfather, spent 30 years in India, in the 19th century, 1870. That was the days of the British Raj. You know how they used to say the sun never set in the British Empire? Granny said that was because God didn't trust the English in the dark. We have great fun in Glencoe. I know it's a wee one-horse town. You're just a lot of living there. But some of the questions you get asked in the museum. This lady came in and said to me, honestly, I swear to God, "That moon that you saw last night," I said, "Yes, is that the same moon that we see in Nebraska? And then one from London. We're going to Edinburgh. I said, oh, you'll enjoy that. What time is a 1 o'clock gunfire? It's not easy, is it? Well, as you know, Scots love dancing. And we say, in Britain, if you get a crowd of Welsh together, they sing. If you get a crowd of Scots together, they have a dance. If you get a crowd of Irish together, they have a fight. If you get a crowd of English together, they all stand about waiting to be introduced and nothing happens. One more thought from my grandmother and then I promise I'll shut up. We're going to the Kirkin of the Tartan on Sunday. Religion is looked at differently by the 4 countries in Britain. We say that the Welsh pray upon their knees and their neighbours. The Scots keep the Sabbath and anything else they can get their thieving hands. An Irishman doesn't quite know what he believes in, but he's quite willing to die for it. An Englishman says he's a self-made man, and thereby relieves the good Lord of a terrible responsibility. I promised Trell I wouldn't keep you here bored any more than I had to. You've been very good, you've stayed awake, most of you. Which is quite remarkable. You know, this is my 3rd trip to the States. Rick Steves pulled me across to Seattle, which I still is part of the States, isn't it? For 2 years I'm now here. And I can say honestly, of the talks I've done there and here, of all the talks I've done, this one, honestly, has been the most recent.
Worth the trip.
This is unheard of for me. I stopped without mentioning whiskey. we make whiskey in Scotland, you probably realise this. And this whiskey we make with 1,000 gallons to sell to the Scots, or the English as we know. And for the Gaelic speaking areas, we make a whiskey in the old fashioned method. It's maybe not as clear as anything, but it's a beautiful smooth whiskey. We're frightened we sell too much of it. I know this is very un-American, but to stop the English buying it, we print the label in the Gaelic. I had to smuggle it out of the country. I mean, from me, I had 4 bottles, but unfortunately, the top accidentally came off the top of one and evaporated. So we brought some across, we put it in the auction. I don't think you'll manage to buy it again, unless, of course, you're good enough to come to Scotland. And if you do come to Scotland, I know a wonderful bed and breakfast.
Tell them about what you went through coming through customs and the airline.
Do you know what they did to me? I went through security. You know, you go through this arch, and you take off my belt and my sporn, the whole lot. Went through and the thing bleeped, and I had about a quarter of an hour to catch the plane from York to Pittsburgh. And standing there like an idiot, they said, we'll need to check, you want to take your kilt off now? Well, no, you'll just remain jealous for the rest of your life. They were asking for a male attendant to come and search me, and the minutes were ticking on. I said, I'm not fussy, there's a female attendant there. So they got a male attendant and they searched me, and it wasn't nearly so much fun. And they discovered it was a buckle, the metal buckles in my kilt that were setting off. Which serves me right for having metal buttons, because when I started wearing a kilt, you just wrapped it round and put the belt on. You didn't have buckles. But there was unpleasantness at the dance with Mary Fraser in 1946 that we won't go into at present. And after that, I put buckles on. The reason for wearing a kilt in the 1920s and 30s in Belarus, your choice was wearing trousers or a kilt. The trousers were made of hand-woven tweed, unlined. You spent your formative years terrified to cross your legs. And I've remained in it ever since. They should be out there spending money.
Well, they will. We'll give them a chance in a minute. The interesting thing that you mentioned that the airline would let you bring just 3 bottles.
That's right.
Through. And the customs.
The customs said, you're only allowed to bring a quart. How much is that? And I said, well, it's 70 centilitres or whatever. So I've got 3 bottles, that's 210 cents. How much is it? Oh, he said, piss off. Thank you very much.
Don't run away. One of the other things that he happened to mention last night, I had the opportunity to drive him back over to where he was staying, was the fact that the problems that in Iraq and the things that are going on now, and the fact that he was in the reserves, he was called up during the Korean War, and he says, you won't believe it, and we were, he says, what, you're going the wrong plane and whatever, and got me distracted, but he said, we had more accidents over there with the, well, come on, you finish it.
There was 36 nations in Korea fighting. Half of you drove in the left and half in the right. Because Japan drives in the left, so Korea did. But we had more casualties in November 1950 with road accidents. Can I go shut up?
No, keep going.
Right. The big difference between the American Army and the British Army, and it's vast. The American Army do not allow their troops to have alcohol in combat. The British Army does not believe you should fight a war sober. So every day I get a shot of whiskey every day. And as a sergeant in a Scottish regiment, once a week I got a bottle to myself, just for the mess. And being a young man and not drinking very much, it built up. And January 1951, with my rifle and pack, I was marching up to the front to Seoul, and I had 4 bottles of whiskey rattling in my pack. And I said to my corporal, I said, I'm going to dump this, because it's just holding me back. Oh no, he said, there's an American unit on our left flank. He said, they might swap 2 feet into chicken for bottles of whiskey. It was understatement of the century. We got rid of 2 of them for mountains of stuff. And then this major came up and said, are you the man with the whiskey, sergeant? I said, yes. What have you got? I said, 2 bottles. Trade you from a jeep number. Yes, sir, will that be all right? He said, I'm writing the report now. Regret to inform you, jeep destroyed by enemy shell fire. I had it for about 20 minutes till my officer saw it and said, where'd you get that? I said, I traded it. Oh, I'll have it. Armies don't change. Thank you. I could go on, but thank you.
You've done that all right. You've entertained us. If the program on Saturday and that you're going to speak there does anything, we won't have anybody there. They'll all be crowded into the room listening to you.
Ladies are priority.
The St. Andrew Society, thanks very much for your indulgence in coming and humoring us, and for taking with us tonight at dinner. And we have a little something for you we'd like to take back home.
Really enjoyed your presentation, Arthur, and we hope you'll come back and see us again. We want you to see our beautiful city and have very warm memories of it.
Thank you.
So these are our colors, black and gold for Pittsburgh.
Yes, that's lovely.
Why don't you open the big one first and then the small one?
Which one's the big one?
You have no idea the fuss the aeroplane people It's like Christmas.
It's a good thing he doesn't unwrap presents like I do every year all night. I try and save the paper.
This is fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, thank you very much indeed.
This is the Golden Triangle of Pittsburgh.
That is wonderful.
Yes.
That'll just take 4 glasses nicely. It will be.
Yes. Cable car. We have 2 new stadiums in Pittsburgh, and this is where the 2 rivers.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, thank you very much indeed. I'll have that up in my living room, and all the people that come to my bed and breakfast will be regaled with stories of what a great place Pittsburgh is. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you again.
Maybe he should explain what all else he has up there that he's brought us. He could tell a little bit about what those items are, like the welcome.
See you try and go, and you got to drive home with her too. Tell us about the coins.
Oh, my grandson has a metal detector. We went looking round about, you know the Romans built a wall, the Antonine Wall. Went down there and he found some Roman coins. We put one down. But what he did find was a silver bobby, you know the old Scottish sixpence. Dated it since 1580s, Mary Queen of Scots. So I brought it over just to put down. Of course we had a dead sheep. And I ate the inside and, sent me the outside. You get the wrapping, And I also had, there's a book there which was Queen Alexander's Christmas present book for 1908. She used her photograph album, her family photograph album, got it to me and used it as a Christmas present. So it was in the museum and I brought it over. If anybody's interested in history, there were some quite interesting photographs. So if it helps the funds a wee bit, and anything else I could still get out of the museum.
Thank you all for coming. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday. So feel free to go around, take a look at the sheets and the items up here again. The photo